Just happens to be one of the great enemies to freedom.
Okay. All right, I think we're set. Okay. Make sure it's picking up. You want to talk in your mic?
Yeah, I can talk in my mic.
Okay, cool. All right, looks like we're good. So, welcome, Mike, to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I'm
No
glad
problem.
to be here.
Yeah. So, we were just talking about some books you wrote.
Yes. Some books that I haven't really advertised too much. I think for a lot of reasons, but they were created for my kids, actually, just to kind of show them how I feel about the world that we're living in right now, and more specifically the political topics that I was telling you about.
Yeah.
Trumpus, the eccentric elephant, talking about the 2016 election.
Yeah.
And then Margaret the Sly Serpent talking about abortion, and then the other one is Bernie the Carefree Cowbird.
So they're kids' books.
They're kids' books, but you could read them you can have your older kids read them. It's really it's kind of a silly way to kind of absorb it's a satirical way of absorbing what has been happening in the world and the different issues that we face. And so I kind of got on that kick once I started getting into politics a little bit more, just thinking about all the things that are affecting our lives right now, and all these different things you see out there, people marching for different causes, and kind of hoping to help my kids understand what those things are. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes, when they see something, they go, "Oh, that's like Margaret, Margaret the Sly Serpent," or "Oh, that's like what happened to Trumpus, right? The elephant," and stuff like that.
So who did your illustrating, or is there pictures? Oh, you did it yourself?
Yeah, I did, and it's not the best. It's good, but I look at Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
And I go, Dr. Seuss's illustrations, let's be honest, they're not like,
It's not very real. It's not real, right?
Yeah.
But it's creative, and the way he shapes his figures, and it's attractive.
Yeah.
So I mean, technically you wouldn't call him a great drawer, but he did it in a way that was unique, that attract people. So do you have like drawing history, or is it just like you did it just for the book?
It's funny, as about 4 years ago, I learned about this thing called Inkscape, which was a free vector drawing thing, and so one of my buddies introduced me to it, and I said, you know what? I go, I'll go take a little tutorial on it and see what happens.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I've done with most of the things nowadays. You just get on YouTube and you get a little tutorial.
Yeah.
And you kind of get hooked, and it shows you how you do lines, and it took me probably a good like 2 days to do one drawing, and all of a sudden I had a wolf there, and I went, whoa, that's cool. And I was thinking, oh, okay, I could do this. I could kind of trace some things, but then I ended up doing more than tracing, doing some drawings and stuff and sketches. But
cool.
Yeah.
So awesome. So your music, I mean, so you kind of have some songs out that are new.
Yeah, so I just released an album. I actually released 3 singles before the album, and the reason I kind of waited on them was my first album, which came out in January. It's a 6-song album. I made them mini albums because you put out a big album, and people like some of the songs on them, but then they don't really like all the songs. And so I always just figure I break it up, and if you like that album, buy that whole album, and it's only 6 songs.
Yeah.
And so, but the 3 I put out as singles were more politically based.
Yeah.
And then the last 6 that I just came out with were like non-political at all. Like they're so unpolitical and more country and more mainstream.
Yeah.
But not like the kind of country that, you hear on the radio today. It's more of the old school type of stuff, 80s, 90s country.
Yeah, I was listening to it. Yeah, it's very much like a dancing country music for bars and just hanging out at parties and whatever.
Yeah, a little rockabilly and
rockabilly.
some of that stuff. So it's like, you kind of get up and move a little bit and have fun. And, one of the coolest things about it is, like I said, I don't even care if I make a lot of money with the songs, but, I really enjoy making them because something for me, something a big, personal thing is what the things you're going to invest your time into.
Yeah.
You want those things to last.
Yeah.
Right. And so I put my kids at the top of that, right? My kids are going to last the longest. They're going to be the legacy that lives on beyond me.
Right.
But there are other things you can do in life, and once they make a song, it doesn't go away. It's part of history. It's part of life. And
Right.
my kids, when they hear the songs, they get out and dance and stuff. And so,
Yeah.
that was a big turning point for me. It was like I see my kids dancing to. I'm like, okay, this is fun. This is gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So
a lot of it comes down to fun, and I think I'm on that same boat. But so you're new to music production, at least, right?
yeah, I think let's see. If you go back since a kid, I've always listened to the '80s and '90s country music, and that was kind of I guess you would call it my genre.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked rock, and I like hip hop, and I like all that stuff. I was raised in different areas around Sacramento, and lived out in Indiana for a year. I've lived in Texas for a couple of years, and everything always kind of comes back to that country upbringing. And my grandparents were Okies from Oklahoma, and so they brought that out here with them. And it's just that lifestyle and that those principles, and you just feel like when you live those types of principles in your life, and you want those kind of principles in your life, your music is going to reflect that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always kind of come back to country music as my go-to. So
Yeah. So obviously your voice is pretty strong. So I'm wondering where you got your vocal experience.
okay. Well, I've never trained.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I've never taken a choir. I've never been in a choir or trained my voice or anything like that. I think it's going to sound funny, but the shower.
Really?
Yes, the shower, and I've never really sang in front of people.
Yeah.
It's never been a thing for me. I've never wanted the attention like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be quite honest, the songs that I've sang and the songs that I put out, it wasn't by choice.
Okay.
This is going to sound kind of funny, but here we go.
Okay. Yeah. Let's go
My
down.
my original thing was I wanted to be a songwriter
Okay.
because I have a lot to share with people. I'm a writer. Going back to we were talking about my books.
Yeah.
I'm a writer by trade. I'm a language teacher, and so I've always loved words and being able to figure out problems around words. And so using words to create melodies
Mm-hmm.
and to create riffs and be able to do things melodically was something I'm really interested in. But I started to kind of put out feelers to people and trying to,
Yeah.
send out little emails to people in Nashville and people in the local area and saying, hey, a couple of bands here. And I said, hey, I'm a songwriter. I'd love to meet up with you or something and maybe write a couple of songs. And they're like, well, what have you written? I'm like, well, I've got, about 20 songs that are halfway written.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't get much attention,
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get to a point where you have to just say, well, you know what? I'm gonna have to take a step, and the next logical step is, I need to sing these songs,
Mm-hmm.
and the next logical step was, okay, I need to find somebody who's gonna help me with the instrumentation. I can't play all the instruments myself,
Right.
and so I found a guy in Nashville, a producer there. His name's John Kennedy, really
Okay.
good dude,
Yeah.
and he brought out the magic in all the songs, and I just
Mm-hmm.
think he did such a wonderful job. I think he just brought everything to life. And then from there, I got to riff off of that and just kind of go create vocals around some of the music he was doing as well.
Yeah.
And so, they turned out that way because there was just a process there. It was a good process. And I kind of prayed my way through all of it. So,
Well, that's cool. Yeah, because they're pretty well written tracks.
thanks.
So I was, it's surprising to hear that you're new, and obviously your voice is pretty strong. I mean, I know you said you go to church, and I know there's singing around that, and that helps a lot, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. And when I was a kid, I used to sing a lot.
Yeah,
It was just something I did.
Yeah, that's cool. So how many kids do you have?
I have 6 kids. I have
Wow,
6 kids, and
that's huge.
yeah, it's a big family, and I've always said, as many as God will give me.
Yeah.
My wife is a little different. Once she's at her 5th one now, so she's like, yeah, I think I'm done. So I'm like, well, we could keep having kids. She's like, no, no. I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, I'm good too. And
Yeah.
so
My philosophy's one at a time. I
one at a
think
time.
we're at the end of that though.
How many kids you have?
2.
2 kids. Okay,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. So it's cool.
Boy and girl, boy,
2
boy.
girls.
2 girls.
Yeah. What about you?
Nice. I've got 4 boys and 2 girls.
Cool.
Yeah.
They are they taken after the country music and art and all that?
Yeah, it's it's kind of funny. My son Atlas. So
Yeah.
Atlas is 8 years old, and he's a big time wrestler. But he's when he gets on the mat, sometimes the coach will put on some music, and that kid will start dancing. And I'm like, I got to stop him. Like, no, you can't do this in the middle of.
Right.
But it's something we do in our family. My wife's a dancer, and my kids, my son Ben, who's 15, he's really into music. He plays a lot of songs. Like he's into Piano Man right now by Billy
Oh
Joel,
yeah.
and
Okay.
he's I don't think they were like they started off loving rock and roll. That was the thing. My
Right.
son Atlas was really into AC/DC, which is something I liked a lot, growing up.
Yeah.
And we'd listen to it a lot when we go to wrestling tournaments and stuff. And so he loved, all the stuff, TNT and all the, Highway to Hell and everything else, which I probably shouldn't be teaching him. But um, he, he got into that stuff. And then I was like, you know what? This kid needs a little bit of country in his life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we started listening to country on Apple Music and stuff. And it's funny, his favorite song now, he gets in the car and he goes, Dad, let's listen to Pickup Man by Joe Diffie. I'm going, what? Did you say Pickup Man by Joe Diffie? I was so happy. It was like the proudest day of my life as a
Yeah.
dad. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So they're fun. They get into it. They love to dance. They love to
Yeah.
sing. And, hopefully someday they really, I think by me getting into music, one of the other big things is as a father, I think it gives my kids a little bit of a,
Mm-hmm.
it just gives them, they go, hey, he can do it. We can do it too.
Right.
And that was one of the things that, I think as a father, one of the big things is to teach your kids all the things they can do because so
Right.
many people are going to tell them what they can't do in life.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think through the years, I've sang a couple times here and there, and I've had people tell me like, don't quit your day job or,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But,
Yeah.
you just kind of you have to live the life that you want them to be able to live, whatever they want to do. So,
I think it's an interesting concept, and I think a lot of people think in the terms of an end goal, which is, I think it's a mistake in general. Most people are like, well, if you can't be pro, then it's not worth going. It's not worth trying. It's not, and I, so they're very destination based, and that might work for them, but life's a journey, and I think if you, I mean, it never ends, right? Life keeps going, and there's lots to learn, and there's no end to how much you can learn. So if you're thinking of life in terms of destination, then yeah, it's easy to shoot down everything because pretty much anything requires a certain amount of journeying and kind of toiling and figuring out where you're going. So that's so. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, take the journey, even though you might not end up at some perfect destination. At least you tried. At
well, and
least
you
you
make
went
a
down
good
the road.
point too. I mean, you think about it, it's if you're only going to be happy with the destination, you're only going to be happy once
Yeah. Yeah.
if you
Exactly.
get there,
Yeah.
right? And so the journey being that what it is finding milestones to be happy about along the journey because
Yeah.
ultimately if you're going to be happy in life, it's going to have to come through the journey. So
Yeah.
absolutely true.
Yeah. A lot of it comes from within. So, anyways, it's worth going through. So you also have a day job. You want to talk about that? Are you allowed to? Or
I'll talk about it.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, no pressure.
And like I was telling you a little bit earlier, it's like I teach Spanish
Yeah.
at a local high school, and uh, I'll just say I don't even care. Granite Bay High School, right?
Okay.
It's in the
All right.
area,
Yeah.
and it's funny because I think one of the hardest things for me getting into making music was this fear that somehow whatever music I made was going to come back and cancel me.
Yeah.
And so actually my first album is called Cancel This.
Right.
And the first song on the album is Cancel This, right?
Right.
Because what I really wanted to say to people was just try to cancel me.
Right.
At some point, I mean, I think the state of California right now is trying to cancel anybody who's,
Yeah.
not getting shot or whatever, getting
Yeah.
the vaccine and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And, to me, it was like, that was like that one thing that said, wow, you're already really going to get rid of people for this one reason. And I said, if they're willing to get rid of people for that reason, they're going to do anything. They can
Right.
do whatever they want to do. So I thought, I'm gonna challenge that because at some point you either stand up or you take it.
Right.
And for me, it was I was given that choice. I thought, well, you know what? I'm gonna write a song about it, and I'm gonna sing it, and I'm gonna see what happens. And so at this point, I can't tell my students what
Yeah.
I do outside of this.
Yeah.
I said it's like the Duke Silver thing on
Yeah.
Parks and Rec,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Where he's got his little secret lifestyle and
Yeah. Yeah.
everything. He's the saxophonist that swoons all the women.
Right.
But for me, this is my way of bringing change to something, or giving something back to, or pushing against whatever's happening in the world.
Right.
And so that's kind of where it was. And actually, if you end up listening to the whole first album, you'll find lyrics in there that refer to the pandemic, everything
Right.
that we're going through. Because when I started writing was when the pandemic started.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I had all this time, because I was doing online stuff for kids, and at the very beginning of it, at like the second year when we started getting into the semester and stuff, all of a sudden we were back on campus hybrid and all that stuff. That took up a lot of time because now I was having to make huge lesson plans and stuff. But at the beginning I just was like going crazy with songs and ideas. But yeah, so that was it. I mean, it really brought me into where I'm at now, which is,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still producing, I'm still writing. What I really wanted to do was write for somebody else.
Right.
But
Right.
but if you haven't produced anything, who's going to trust you, and who's
I
going to
see.
take the time to, have
So
you write for them?
you basically want to be a lyricist then.
That's what I started out to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it ended up being that, yeah, hey, I sound all right.
Right.
And I found a way to get someone to help me out with the other instruments and stuff. And so I feel very good about the songs that I've made and that we've made. I say we because John was a big part of it. And yeah, I'm just gonna see what happens from there. I'm still up for hopefully maybe writing some songs with some of the local bands here, or hopefully maybe somebody in Nashville. And if they hear enough of my stuff and they appreciate that, maybe they'll want to have a co-writing thing or something like that. So
Have you tried Fiverr at all?
I haven't done Fiverr. I was on SoundBetter.
Oh,
SoundBetter
okay.
is where I found John.
Okay.
And I'm still on SoundBetter. I haven't posted my stuff on SoundBetter because I've been so focused on producing.
Yeah.
But that's probably a next step, right? That's
Yeah.
something that comes down the line.
Yeah.
But at the current time, I'm just kind of putting my music out there, seeing where it falls, see if there's any ears that really like it, and take hold of it. And
Would you join a band locally if it came up, if it came the opportunity opened itself up?
I think I would.
Yeah.
I think I would. I think I'm ready to go out and perform the songs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the thing that I was aiming for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think at some point you have to, if you're gonna create something, you have to take ownership of it,
Yeah.
and you have to kind of go out there and I don't know, be with people. That's
Yeah.
kind of what it is.
Yeah.
I think as an artist, sometimes I get really bogged down. I'll get on my chair in my room and I'll start doing my lyrics and I'll start singing and I'll do all these great things, but then I'll sit there and I'll go, kind of, it's like a little lonely in here. There's no one around, and
Yeah.
I don't get to really share it with people. I'll share it with my family when it's all done. But
Yeah.
at some point, I'd like to do that. That would be great. Yeah, I've thought about it.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. throw it in the universe, and hopefully something comes back to me.
One of your songs was talking about Carolina. Have you been there? Are you
Oh,
from there, or you have history?
so Carolina Sunrise,
Yeah.
which is it's a beautiful song. The so you'll in this I'll go back to one of my other songs and I'll come back to Carolina Sunrise, but there's a song called Kami Fornaye,
Okay.
right? And I'm a part of this group on Facebook called Life After California.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these people, it's basically the same stuff over and over again. We don't like California because of this, or
Yeah.
California this, California. So there's this desire for a lot of people to get out of California. And you see that we've lost, seats in the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
and people are moving by the
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of thousands to maybe a million here soon. But um, I had this dream that I should move somewhere else, and
Mm-hmm.
my wife and I are still kind of actively looking at moving out of California. Um, but Carolina Sunrise came up because when I was a kid, when I was living in Indiana,
Mm-hmm.
I was in eighth grade, and this song came out called Heads Carolina, Tails California
Oh,
by
okay.
Jody Messina.
Okay.
And I remember that song vividly because I was living with my grandfather at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the choice of either coming back to California
Mm-hmm.
or staying there.
Yeah.
And I could come live with my mom in California, or I could live there in Indiana with my grandfather. And it was a tough decision.
Yeah.
But that song made me go, oh, I would love to go back to California. This song makes me so hard,
Yeah.
and now as I look back at that, I went, oh, I wish I could live in Carolina, just because of all the stuff that's been happening here with the
Yeah.
lockdowns and stuff and the masks, and so that's kind of where I went with it. So I
Yeah.
thought about the sunrise, and then the other part of that was okay. So this is a funny story too. Sorry, my wife, and she'd hate me. Okay, honey, I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry for telling this
She
story.
probably won't watch this.
Oh,
It's okay.
yeah.
At least she won't get to this point.
Maybe I won't give her the link. So anyway, so yeah, so my wife and I were staying at my mom's house in Marin County, and she gets up really early and she comes over and whispers to me. She goes, "Hey, Mike, do you want to go over and watch the sunrise on the ocean?"
Yeah.
And I went, I was left half asleep. I go, "Honey, we're in California. The sunrise doesn't happen over the ocean." so I was making this song about Carolina, and I went, "Oh, wouldn't that be funny? Carolina sunrise, because that's
Yeah.
where it happens,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
the sunrise happens." And then eventually, as you get into the song, I think the third verse it starts talking about um, riding toward that beautiful light on the horizon, which is the new beginning.
Right.
And so that's kind of where I went with that. Was
Mm-hmm.
in the song it talks about how this guy gets his heart broken,
Right.
finds a new wife.
Yeah.
He ends up having kids with her, and the story goes along. The old girlfriend comes back to him,
Yeah.
and he's basically like, "Look, I've moved on." Right?
That was a different song. Was it the same song?
Same song.
Okay.
Same
I
song.
remember listening
But
to that
there is
story.
another one. You're thinking of Gallop Away.
Yeah, Gallop Away. Okay.
But they're both
Yeah.
very similar, but
Okay.
they're just a little different story. But
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, so the girlfriend comes back and he goes, I've moved on. And then the kids are these obviously wonderful kids because they go up and hug the lady,
Yeah.
right? But the idea is that when things go wrong in your life, when life's puzzle pieces don't quite fit,
Yeah.
you go towards that light on the horizon, which is the new beginning, and you
Yeah.
start something new. And so that's kind of the idea behind Carolina Sunrise was new beginnings, and it's kind of like the phoenix rising from the ashes. When we
Right.
come out of this pandemic, what are we going to get out of this pandemic? What have you learned? What have you grown? And what have you done?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that was kind of where it went with that song.
So, what's your family history in California?
Ooh, so my grandparents,
Okay.
right? They moved from Oklahoma
Okay.
back in I want to say it was in the 50s, early 50s.
Okay.
But they were, they came over at a pretty young age for the
Mhm.
most part. Maybe it was the 40s, I can't remember. But I know my grandparents were here in high school in like 55, 54. And, but they came over around the time that it was just really bad in Oklahoma. The Dust Bowl had gone through there. And
Right.
so it was pretty poor. And they came out, they were farm hands. And so they came out here and worked here in the Stockton area and Modesto and all that stuff. And and I'll give you a brief background, but poverty was a very big part of my childhood.
Okay.
So growing up,
Yeah.
that cycle of drugs and alcohol and
I see.
addiction and everything like that kind of took its toll on our family all the way up until I was out of high school even.
Wow.
So we were homeless, and I mean homeless in the sense that we were living from house to house from the time I was essentially born until I was about a junior in high school.
Wow.
And so through that experience, and that's, hence I moved to Indiana for disciplinary reasons. I had to kind of get out of that funk because
Oh,
I was
okay.
doing bad things. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you get wound up in that cycle. And then all of a sudden you realize, you have to break it.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
get out of it, because I've seen it for 3 generations. And if you look at the news stories from my family history, I've got, my great grandfather was in jail for this reason, running around, town and stuff. And so I found out that had been a family thing
Yeah.
for generations. And so, breaking that cycle, being able to live where I live now, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And Granite Bay is a beautiful place. And there's some really down to earth people. I know people give it a kind of a bad rap, and
Yeah.
there's people have money there and stuff like that. But if you really meet some of the people in Granite Bay, you kind of realize there's some really
Yeah.
golden people there.
They're
So
pretty easygoing. I mean, that's Wilton. My family has a similar history. In fact, I think they came from Oklahoma too.
wow,
I'm fourth generation here in California.
okay,
Um, I'm this is my home, and I think I've considered leaving and everything, but I don't know. I just feel like this is my home, and I'm gonna fight. I feel like I gotta fight for it.
okay,
So that's kind of my position on that, because I have considered going to Texas. I actually went over to Austin to look at houses. Like, we were really considering it.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, we have family history here in California, and uh, I don't know. I feel attached to it, and it's cool, that we both kind of have a similar, like, we have a similar family history where our family came over here from Oklahoma, and it's just interesting where the paths take you, where
yeah.
your family. So do you think your experience as a youth led you to become a high school teacher?
Yeah, actually, well, yeah, is a huge part of it. I
Yeah.
mean, I when I was about 9 years old, I was really confused. I was living in Del Paso Heights, and
Yeah.
we were in this. Well, we bounced around from one drug house to another, and so
Wow.
it sounds horrible. It was, but I never consider myself a victim. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Okay.
know people will say, well, oh, well, it's poor you, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
never poor me. It's like it was an experience. It was something that taught me something, right?
Right.
But I went through that experience, and realizing this is not the kind of life I want to live.
Yeah.
Even as a 9-year-old, I knew that. I knew that much.
Yeah.
So I prayed, and I told my mom. I said, "Hey, let's go to church. Let's find a church."
Right.
So we went to churches around town, and tried a bunch of churches out. Didn't quite feel comfortable in some of them, and I found my church. Right.
Right.
She had the missionaries come over and teach us, and what was great about that experience was I didn't even know at the time. When you're 9 years old, you don't even realize it, but that God is working on you.
Mm-hmm.
He's given you something in your life to work towards, and even if you don't take it at that moment,
Yeah.
sometimes in time, God's preparing you for something else.
Yeah.
And at 9 years old, I got baptized, but then I didn't really go to church much. Right?
Yeah.
I was 9 years old all the way until I was even into high school. I went to church maybe once a month,
Mm-hmm.
and but I think by the time I turned 18, and I realized, man, I'm going to be on my own.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to have anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay, well, there's someone you can have, and that is God, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, that was the big thing was growing up was having that kind of impact all the things that I was doing. When I went on my mission, I went on a mission for 2 years to Texas. I prayed, and I said, "Hey God, what is it that I should do? Like, what should I mean, like, I'm here helping people, preaching the gospel. I'm doing the best I can." And the thought came to my mind, the impression came to me, what do you love to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I've never really thought about that. Like, what do I really love to do? I mean, I guess I loved sports. I played 4 sports in high school, right?
Right.
Had some really good teachers in high school.
Yeah.
I guess I could throw out some names since we're on a podcast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's like, so Mike Lynch, one of my favorite guys of all time. Yeah. And Dale Mortensen and Ernie Cooper and some of these guys that you see that were the coaches over there at Granite Bay High School, and Scott Brawley, just some of the most genuinely good men that I've ever met. And what I realized was I want to be like those guys.
Yeah.
I want to be the caliber of a person that makes kids feel like they can accomplish something, that
Right.
they have someone to turn to.
Right.
And so the first thought that came to my mind was, what do I love to do? well, I would love to be one of those guys. And
Yeah.
they were teachers and coaches.
Yeah.
And the other thing was I loved Spanish.
Yeah.
So, of course, I was like, oh, Spanish teacher. I put the two words together. Okay, there you go.
Very cool.
So, yeah, Spanish teacher, PE teacher, right? That was the other thing. So
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I could be a PE teacher too, but
Yeah.
never quite came to that. That one didn't come to fruition, but I actually really enjoy Spanish, so it's quite fine.
Well,
So
now you can become a music teacher.
there you go. Yeah, maybe. Maybe we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So
I was just kidding.
anything's possible.
Yeah,
Anything's
that's
possible.
true.
So,
What were your musical inspirations as a kid?
you know, it's funny. I like George Strait a lot. I love George Strait from when I was a kid. I liked Garth Brooks. That was actually the first CD I ever bought.
Okay.
Was Garth Brooks' The Hits
Okay.
CD, which
Yeah.
was phenomenal, and and having a CD as a kid in '95 was a big deal, right? That was a huge deal in '95. I know you're kind of a youngster. You
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
probably
like, no,
remember
not
that,
really.
but for me, it was a big deal.
We were the iPod generation.
You were the
Yeah,
iPod generation,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah. I still don't know how to use those, but I can do Apple Music now. I got my
Yeah.
iPhone. That's a lot easier than the iPod. That thing doesn't have a screen or anything on it. I was so confused.
Some of them don't. Yeah.
Yeah, so, but I like Garth Brooks. I think I really enjoyed the style of Joe Diffie.
Okay.
Randy Travis, Tracy Lawrence, but those guys, and Alan Jackson. See, the thing about George Strait is, you don't look at George Strait and say he's some powerhouse vocalist, right? He's not a
Yeah.
Whitney Houston.
He's
or-
He's good at putting on shows.
He is.
Yeah.
And his voice is like the movie he made, Pure Country.
Yeah.
It is that pure country sound that you love listening to.
Yeah.
And that was one of those things I was like, I don't have to be Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
I don't have to be,
Yeah.
Tina Turner and some of these others that can just belt out these beautiful notes and stuff. If I can sound like a country person,
Yeah.
a country star or whatever, a pure countryist.
Yeah.
It's like that to me trumps everything else. And that's what I think Willie Nelson said it best, right?
Right.
Country is two things. It's three chords and the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
And so that's kind of what I try to convey in my music is what is true in the world today. What do we want to say but nobody can say it.
Yeah.
And can I do it with some lyrics and some fun. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. It's good to keep things simple as much as possible sometimes. I remember I used to actually listen to country. That was my primary music interest when I was later high school years, I guess, probably when I started driving and I had my own car.
Mm-hmm.
And just listening to country music was just fun,
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of outgrew it. I do agree that the country, I haven't really been a fan of where the country genre has gone recently. I felt like it kind of went to party, like talking about partying and like,
Derobing women and
yeah, it's like,
oh really?
and like I get it, a little bit here and there is fine. Like I'm down for a good time, but
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Let's talk about something better. I mean, they just kind of went down that path of just kind of appealing to the masses and trying to
yeah.
go that way.
And
so.
there's some guys that still do it right,
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I really like Luke Combs,
Oh, yeah.
I like his sound. I like the way he sounds more. He sounds more '90s country
Yeah.
to me.
Mhm.
I really like Billy Currington,
Oh, okay.
and so there's some that I listen to, but my producer, John
Yeah.
Kennedy,
Yeah.
he's funny because he's like, well, I could make you sound like this, or I can, and he
Yeah.
threw a couple of names out there, and I went, who is that? I'm like, I know they're probably popular country singers now,
Yeah, yeah.
but I have no clue who they are. So I'm like, so I look them up, and I'm listening to them. I go, oh, I can't listen to this. And it's about 20 seconds in, and I'm going, oh man, this is bad. And so I'm like, no, let's just, So he's like, whenever I, introduce songs to him and stuff, he takes it and charts it and does the instrumental stuff with it, and but he always asks me, so what do you want this kind of sound like? What do you envision this sounding like? And so I'll send him a couple of samples, and it's never the new stuff. I can't do the new stuff, so
Yeah.
It's like, the old stuff and some of the 80s, 90s stuff, Hank Williams and George Strait and, some stuff like that. Joe Diffie especially. But, he's pretty straight up with me. He's pretty real with me. He says,
Yeah.
this is going to sound like this. This sounds more like a rockabilly song. And I'll go, yeah, it does. And he's
Yeah.
just always pretty well spot on. So,
Yeah, I went through. My favorite country music artist right now is probably Zach Brown.
oh, yeah.
I think because he's got soul and there's my grandpa. Come in. Yeah,
Hi, Grandpa.
Hey, who's that?
this is Mike.
Hi, Mike.
We're just talking.
Yep.
Hey, Grandma, let's talk to you for a minute.
All right, I'll come up after this. I'll be up in like 30 minutes. Is that cool?
Yeah, not too much longer. I'm ready for bed.
Okay. It's only 7. That's my grandpa.
Okay. Love it.
So, anyways, we were talking about Zach Brown. So, one of my favorite music artists. I don't know. His music just speaks to me. I think it's more soul based.
Mhm.
Yeah, and he's also more. I like that he's really creative with music, and he doesn't like stick to a certain sound. He plays with reggae. He plays with soul music, and but he also doesn't go down the path of. He hasn't gotten too electronic, which isn't my favorite sound in country particularly. But anyways,
No, there's something to be said for. I think there are some crossover that can happen between country, reggae. I think is a really good one. I really like reggaeton,
okay.
which is it's a Spanish beat and everything. It's got the salsa beats and everything. But the reggaeton I really like, and I'd like to do something that's similar to that. But obviously I don't want it to be too much of that.
Yeah.
To be able to do the country angle on it, but again, it's got to still have certain aspects to it. The steel guitar is one of those great things. It's a really important tool in the country music arsenal. I think.
Yeah.
The fiddle. There's all kinds of these country instruments that you have to have.
So, do you play an instrument right now, or are you learning?
So I can play a mean harmonica.
Really?
I can play a
Wow.
little bit. I can play a little bit on the harmonica. I make up some pretty good riffs. I can play a little guitar. I only know the main chords.
Okay.
But I've created a couple of songs, or at least written a couple of songs, just from a couple of chords, right? Which kind of puts me in a tone and in a mood that I'm feeling. Okay, I feel this when I play this chord, and all of a sudden I feel like, oh, okay, some inspiration comes from that.
Yeah.
I can play a little piano.
Yeah.
But overall, I wouldn't say I'm a musician.
Yeah.
It wasn't what I spent a lot of time in when I was a kid, so I ended up being more of
Yeah.
going along the writing path, right?
Well, I mean, that again, it kind of goes along that journey thing we were talking about. I mean, I've been playing drums for 20 years now. I'm actually 24, almost 25. Yeah.
I'm gonna take this off.
Okay. Yeah. No problem.
here. It's okay.
Anyways, I've been playing for 20 years, and like, I was just thinking in the car, it's weird. I still don't consider myself like a drummer. I've been playing for 25 years. I don't consider myself a drummer. I say I play the drums because there's an infinite amount of things I can learn,
Yeah.
and the learning never stops. So
You ever play with the band?
I've played with multiple bands. I've played with DJs. I've played recording and all that. It's mostly been fun, and I actually have 2 uncles in Italy that play professionally, and they've
Wow.
played with some pretty big artists. But yeah, I mean, as far as my history, it's just been kind of fun. I played in high school and all that sort of stuff. So
Okay.
yeah, it's just kind of been one of my things, and I've stuck with it. So
Nice. Did you ever think that you might want to drum for like a big band?
yeah, I mean, I'm open to it. I consider the lifestyle, right? I mean, the lifestyle is the biggest issue for me.
Gotcha.
But nowadays with technology and like distance learning being a possibility, I don't know. It just seems like it's more on the cards than it ever has been, and so I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it at this point.
Gotcha.
So
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing. The new stuff that's happening, like with John, like I tell you about John, I've never met John.
Yeah.
Right. I've only talked to John once on the phone.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we got together on Sound Better,
Yeah.
and I said, hey, I've got 6 songs I want you to do.
Yeah.
And I just said, he goes, hey, I'll do them. I'll make them amazing. And I went, this guy, okay, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So I forked up some money and I said, okay, let's see what you can do with them. And I praying the whole way. I'm like, okay, pray, help him, Heavenly Father, help him. And I was every single time the guy he's amazing, and the way that he does it comes out so just quality, professional, and he has some really good studio musicians that he works with there.
Yeah.
Like top of the line guys, and who I've never met, but yet we've made 15 songs together.
Yeah.
And we've never met each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's so the drumming and being part of that, it's feasible nowadays.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So-
So being a studio, in fact, that's my next mountain to climb, is learning how to mic drums. I've been playing with it. I've never really done it on my own. So when I set the studio up, which was only a couple months ago, that was part of the motivation is to just learn how to do all this stuff so I can put it out there, and because at this point it's all been live performance, and just like on a weekly basis I'll come out here and maybe play for like an hour or two. Now I'm doing it every day almost, and I'm learning how to mic. So
Yeah.
just taking that mountain.
Well, then you know what, you did it smart, because here's the deal: if you want to do something in life, you have to set up your environment
Yeah, yeah,
to get you to do it.
Yeah.
Right. You can't just say one day, oh, I'm going to be a drummer,
yeah,
and you don't have a kit near you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or let's say, oh, I've got a friend over here who has a drum set. I'll just go over to his house and drum. It's like, it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
You got to change your environment, and it's amazing what you've done with the place, because it's like,
Yeah.
hey, you got a studio here.
yeah,
You can talk to people that are into the same type of stuff. It's
Yeah,
like you're going. It seems like you're setting up that environment perfectly for you. So
yeah.
it's awesome.
So being a country singer, this is gonna be kind of a funny question. Do you know how to drive a tractor?
I could learn. I think learn pretty quickly. I've seen my father-in-law drive his little tractor, so it shouldn't be too hard.
You can do stick shift.
Oh yeah, I can do stick
All right, you
shift. That's what I learned how to drive on. Was a stick shift.
See, that I was the opposite. See, we have tractors out here. We've got a couple, so I could teach you if you want. But
Okay.
we've got an old one and a newer one, and we've actually cycled through a few. But anyways, that's where I learned how to drive stick, was on the tractor, because it's
wow.
like it's like a fraction of the speed of a car, but you still have to learn how to use the clutch and the gears and all that. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's how I learned it. It's funny. My mom was being poor, we didn't have all the automatic stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
We were
right.
still in the 90s. We still had, there was like that interesting like crossover. They were still like putting out stick shifts,
Yeah,
but it wasn't as much, right?
Right.
It was starting to go to automatic.
yeah.
But of course, my mom had a cheap 80s pickup truck.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of how I learned. I was on that thing, and it was the loosest stick thing. I thought I was going to fall out, but yeah, it was barely together, and yeah, that's how I learned how to drive. And luckily, I learned how to drive that way because it made me appreciate the other stuff. And, that's kind of like, I think all of us growing up in the 90s, kind of learned to appreciate what we were getting.
Yeah.
The internet and stuff like that. I don't think people appreciate it as much anymore.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They just know it's available. But then whenever something happens, the internet goes down, it seems like society starts to collapse a little bit.
Yeah, people go a little crazy, but I mean, I think every generation has had that thing they kind of depend on and they forget is a luxury.
Yeah.
I mean, more so now because of we've had such a big boom of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm a younger generation, so I hear the complaints of people that are older talking about kind of the new way of how things are going, and I'm like, well, it kind of is what it is, and obviously it's on us as the younger guys to figure out how to work with it, and it's a major learning curve, so it's going to require a lot of mess ups and a little bit of patience.
Yeah, definitely. That's how they say. I think it was Edison, that every time that he failed, he didn't fail.
Yeah.
He was just found out a different way not to succeed. Or what was it? He didn't fail at it. It was just he found out a different way not to do it.
Right.
Right. So it was like, it wasn't a failure. It was just something that he learned another way not to make the light bulb.
Yeah.
That was what it was. So I mean, if the guy failed like, I don't know how many times, 400 times, but
Yeah.
Yeah, but he just learned another way not to make the light bulb. So yeah.
So do you have plans to do some Mexican music or Spanish speaking music, I guess?
I'd like to. I mean, you know, I think I have to find a different producer, maybe. I don't know if John can do that, but I've never asked John. So
He might be able to.
he
You never
might
know.
be able
He
to.
probably knows some people.
He is a consummate professional. I mean, the
Yeah.
guy is amazing. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I'll have to ask him. But I'd like to do, a Spanish album. I mean, it would be fun. I think.
Yeah.
And if I'm looking for ways to put some Spanish into my country songs, but you've heard a couple,
Yeah.
over the years where they put a little bit of Spanish in there. I actually have one song that I'm writing that's kind of funny,
Yeah.
but it does use a little bit of Spanish. But I'm like, I can't put too much Spanish in there because it just doesn't quite meld.
Yeah.
And when you say it with a country accent, it doesn't really. I don't know. It just
Yeah.
sounds kind of funny. So
Could be considered appropriation.
oh yeah,
Just letting you know. Don't want to go there.
don't want to appropriate either. So, yeah, I know. I get I get a little. I was wearing they call it a sarape, right? A sarape is a poncho or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I was wearing that around campus because it was cold outside, and I was like wearing it, and these kids looked at me and they're like,
Yeah.
like I'm like, oh, get over it, come
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
really, like, and then I'm like, they'll be like, why are you wearing that? That's appropriate. I'm like, listen, I go, número uno, soy maestro de español, right? I am a Spanish teacher.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I had to have a little street cred out there for him, just throw it out there, like,
Yeah.
okay. But at the same time, I'm going, oh my gosh, is this really the world we live in right now? Like, I can't even wear something.
It's just functional. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It's functional. It looks nice.
Yeah.
And you're a Spanish teacher, so hello.
And there's a funny story behind how I got it.
Okay, what's
I
that?
was at the what was it, the state fair.
Okay.
And they have the vendors out there.
Yeah.
And this Mexican guy that was there selling these sarapes. And I was like, oh, this one's beautiful. It's blue, it's white, it's got an eagle from the Mexican flag on it. I'm like, oh, this is cool. So I go up to it and I start looking at it, and the guy's like, hey, and in Spanish. Or no, he said in English. He goes, hey, that costs like $40. You want to take it? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, and so I started talking to him in Spanish. I was like, oh, pero tienes el descuento para los gringos que hablan español, right? I'm like, do you have a discount for the gringos that can speak Spanish?
Yeah.
And his eyes went wide, and he goes, oh, I do have a discount for you. So he gave it to me for $25. I was like, what a cool guy.
Yeah.
And what you find out is in reality.
Yeah.
Okay. When you get beyond all the people that are offended by everything,
Right.
you find out that people are not offended by everything.
Right. Yeah.
And if you speak someone's language, number one, that's not appropriation. That's respect. It's
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when I was down in Texas, they would be surprised that I could speak Spanish.
Yeah.
And they would open up.
Yeah.
They would be so happy.
Yeah.
And they would love you more just for the fact that you were able to, or you took the time
Right.
to speak their language. And so, when people get all offended by these things, like if I wore a sarape down there, they wouldn't be offended by it. They would
Yeah.
be like, oh, he's taking in our culture.
Yeah.
Right? That's an amazing thing. It feels good. It feels like you're bonding. It feels like, that's unity.
Yeah.
But being offended by it, that's division.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
fun little tidbit
Yeah,
there.
it's a funny story.
Yeah.
So okay, you got a couple. We're coming to the end here, so you've got a couple songs you want to highlight or put at the end. We usually I'll put at the end of the video,
Okay.
but we can talk about it. I mean, you sent me over two.
Yes.
Gallop Away.
So Gallop Away is the second one. We talked about
Was the second.
Carolina Sunrise the
Yeah.
first time, right?
Yeah.
Gallop Away is another love and redemption song,
Okay.
right? And so Gallop Away starts off with this guy. He's working on a family ranch, right?
Yeah.
Poor boy, right? That's kind of where I come from. It's my, I guess this song is poetic to me. It speaks to me because when I was a young kid, it was hard for me to date
Yeah.
or to want to be with anybody.
Right.
Because to me, it was like, I'm poor. Why would any girl want
Yeah.
to date me, right?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of insecurity that came with that.
Right.
I hid it. I did the best I could. I was a four-sport athlete, so I thought, oh, okay, I have something going for me. I'm
Right.
pretty good at sports, and I feel like there's going to be some great things in my future. But I always felt like I wasn't good enough to be the guy of any girl's dreams, if you will.
Right.
So this guy, this ranch hand, gets the dad's there. He starts to fall in love with this girl on the ranch, and the dad says, "Look, you're gonna have to get out of here, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Gallop away, basically, right?"
yeah,
And so they become friends and stay friends, but
yeah,
that's it. That's all they can do. That's all they can be. And eventually, she goes off to college. He's still working because
yeah.
that's just what he does.
Right.
Um, and one of the lines in there that really resonates with me is when it says, she had so many wild oats to be sown,
Mm-hmm.
right? So she had to still sow her wild oats. She
Right.
was no longer this little girl. She wanted to go out and be this woman.
Right.
But in the end, she finds out that those wild oats are what's going to bring her down,
Right. Right.
right? So there's a guy there, and he, leaves her beaten and bare, right? That's the lyric. And the ranch hand comes back and says, "I'm still here, right? I'm gonna take care of this guy." And
Yeah.
what I think was really cool about the redemption part of that is, and the story is, you just can't quit your family. That was one of the big messages.
Right.
And the ranch hand didn't want to take her away from her family.
Right.
That was more important to him because him as a poor boy,
Right.
same with me. I always feel like family is the most important thing. It's the one thing you got,
Right.
right? You might not have money.
Right.
You might not have food. You might not have shelter, whatever it is. But family runs deep, and they're the
Right.
ones who experience everything with you.
Right.
And so, anyway, at the end, the father brings him in because he sees that this young ranch hand is willing to be there for his daughter.
Right.
So they break bread, right? That's the lyric.
Yeah.
And and she sees that he's now with his dad and becomes his right hand man.
Right.
And because of that, he invites him into the family. He sees the value of this young man and the heart of this young man.
Right.
And the girl gets to see that too.
Yeah.
And so she comes back, and they and the theme of the song is "Gallop Away," but it kind of alludes to all these different types of horses
Yeah.
that they breed. Right, that's what they do on the ranch. So they breed these different types of horses. So different horses are in the choruses,
Yeah.
and it talks about the American quarter horse, which is a loyal breed, right?
Right.
So it talks about how this young man's loyal.
Right.
And then it talks about the what was the second one there? The Belgian who pulls the sleighs.
Right.
Right? So they're the tough ones, the strong ones. And so that represents the strength of this young man.
Yeah.
And then the last one is the thoroughbred,
Right.
which is the one that will always be there quickest, right? It's the
Right.
fastest one. And so it takes you through this sorry,
It's okay.
this story of how this young man is all these different things,
Yeah.
and how he's always going to be there quickly.
Yeah.
And then probably my favorite line of the whole thing is it says, "I see her, my blinders won't lead me astray."
Yeah.
And that's all those things that get in the way, but what he sees is her.
Right.
And that's the most important thing in his life. And so I think for me that speaks to me because like when I got married, my wife became the center of my life.
Yeah.
And nothing's ever perfect, but
Yeah.
at the same time you realize that in your heart she is the one that kind of is the light of everything. She holds everything together. She's the glue.
Right.
And so anyway, so that's where that whole story went together, and I base it on a lot of things out of experience, right? I don't think that I could have written this song 10 years ago,
Right.
right? Had I not been through what I've been through and been with my wife and had my kids and stuff, and had I not been through what I've been through when I was younger, I wouldn't be able to write that song. So I
Yeah.
think, right now is the time that the Lord has prepared, going
Yeah.
back to what we talked about in the beginning, the Lord has prepared for me to be able to experience and do the things that I can do now.
Yeah.
If it hadn't been for all those different things that I've been through,
Right.
I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be able to write the songs that I write. So
Yeah. It's an accumulation of yeah, and I think that's really the true God path is realizing that good or bad, whatever has accumulated to make you exist in this moment is something to be grateful for, because regardless of, we all have our own struggles, we all have the things in our past that we regret or that we felt deficient from, but there's also things that we love there's things that we cherish in this life, and it's important to be grateful not only for the good things that led there, but also the struggles that led there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah. Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers too, right?
Yeah,
Garth
that too.
Brooks. Yeah.
yeah,
Lots of really good lessons, That's
Yeah.
the thing about country music. It's all there for you to learn from. So,
okay,
yeah.
awesome. Well, thanks for hanging out with me, and we'll attach your song at the end.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for having me. I loved it. It's,
Yeah.
great guy, great
Thanks.
great place. Man,
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Met her on her family ranch, poor boy working for some carte blanche. She was armed with southern charm, fancy this ranch hand on her left arm. Her daddy told me to saddle up, 'cause I'd never hold that Grace Cup. She said that we'd stay friends, but that wasn't how our story ends. I'm a gallop away, American quarter and loyalty. I can't battle the powers that be. You just can't quit your family. So I just galloped away. Held out till the very last day, called me crying when she moved away. Two good friends went their separate ways. She's off at college and I work days. The time passed and she moved on, with too many wild oats to be sown. One guy left her beaten and bare, till a young ranch hand gave that boy a scare. I'm a gallop away, like a Belgian pulling a sleigh. He found out the hard way. I bet you he felt that shifting weight, 'cause he just galloped away. I was mad to say the least, for Daddy saw all he needed to see. He broke bread, he had a plan, became her daddy's right-hand man. For too long I was on my knee, in front of all those horses we breed, surrounded by her friends and family. Said I'm just a gallop away, a thoroughbred on the raceway. I'll be there swiftly to save her day. I'm just a gallop away, and now we're going down that straight way. I see her, my blinders won't lead me astray. Her daddy found his protege. That's how we galloped away.